Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
And essentially we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is life illuminated. By Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians, a Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology, look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
And welcome. Access to Democracy returns. Alan Miller here. And with us is a return guest. But he's not only a return guest, but he's one of the most important and influential Democratic voices in the United States, not just in the state of Minnesota. And Ken Martin, welcome back.
Well, thank you, and thanks for that kind introduction. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're now a vice chair of the National Committee. You're a man who, in the last election, was picked to go around state by state where they needed help, and they got it. And since 2011, we have every constitutional office filled with Democrats here in Minnesota. So yes, it's well deserved.
Well, thank you. I feel blessed to be able to lead this party. And since 2017, when I was elected by my peers to lead the State Chairs Association, making me a vice chair of the DNC, I feel very fortunate to be able to travel the country and to export a little bit of the special recipe we have here in Minnesota on how we do politics to other states and help them organize and build their party. And of course, the results of the 18 elections and now this past election in 2019, which was really spectacular for Democrats up and down the ballot, is a direct result of all the hard work of so many people who have rolled up their sleeves and are trying to take back their democracy right now. It's really astounding what's happening in this country. And while sometimes we have the tendency to hang our heads, I think what we're seeing is a resounding activism and a renewed sense of purpose by people who really need some hope, and we're seeing that now.
Well, we have some great candidates, and some we've had before. Some, like Amy Klobuchar, is first time in the and she keeps doing better and better. Certainly a local favorite. I don't know how you get involved in the national picture, but
yeah, look, as a national officer, we've taken an oath to stay neutral, particularly as a result of some of the shenanigans in the 2016 cycle. And so it's very important for me to honor that neutrality pledge, and all of the officers very early on in our terms took that pledge. So, but what I do want to say is that there are 19 candidates in the race. I hear another candidate may be getting in here shortly.
I wanted to ask you about him,
yeah. But I will say of the candidates we have right now, I feel blessed. We have an embarrassment of riches, many different candidates who bring different perspectives and walks of life, different policy positions to the table. It really gives our party something to consider and a lot of different options. It's a very diverse field. We have a number of women candidates running, a number of people of color running. It is just a really rich field, and I feel blessed that we have the choice in front of us. Now the key though is to make sure that once that decision is made, that we find ways to bring the party back together. There's going to be a lot of folks who fall in love with their candidate of choice, and that's perfectly fine.
That happens
It
every
does.
election.
Right. Well, what we have to do, I mean, this is an existential moment for us, and we can't allow what happened in 2016 to happen again, because the reality in 2016 is that it wasn't just Republicans who elected Donald Trump, it was also Democrats. We had
It was people who sat home.
Yes, we had
also.
10% of Democrats who actually voted for Trump. We had 53% of white women who voted for Donald Trump. We had a tripling
Which
of the
is
third,
beyond my comprehension.
a tripling of the third party vote, and probably most distressing to me as the chair of the Democratic Party here in Minnesota, as you mentioned, is the number of people who just decided not to vote at all and stayed home. You see, in 2016, Democrats let perfect be the enemy of good, and we can't allow that to happen again.
Well,
we have to
can't
support
allow
whomever
the candidate is, and as you say, you know, I certainly have committed to Amy as I committed to Bernie, and I still love the two of them.
Yeah.
But no matter who it is, it's up to the people who are the losers to make sure that their people get out and get this man out of the presidency.
That's right.
Because we may not have a country left 4 years from now if he wins again. And you know, you had this article in the Star Tribune in June, Minnesotans don't owe Trump a second term. Actually, he didn't even earn a first term because he lost by 3 million votes. We have that archaic electoral college.
Yes.
But I suspect you're going to be spending a lot more time in Minnesota this election than in other places around the country, simply because we have been made a target state.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't surprise anyone. Donald Trump has made no secret of the fact that he's going to target Minnesota. And the one thing I know to this date that he's not lying about, despite his many lies, is that they're actually trying to make this state a battleground. And they have 20 people on the ground right now, 4 offices around the state. Their digital spend is significantly more than Democrats combined in the state right now. And so they are working very hard to actually win Minnesota. And it shouldn't surprise anyone after the 2016 election, where Hillary Clinton only won this state by 1.5 points, 44,000 votes to be exact. And so Donald Trump is obsessed with flipping Minnesota. And of course, the reason why is a couple-fold. One, there's no map that exists for a Democrat to win the presidency without us keeping Minnesota in the blue column. Two, there's some...
it's not just our 10 electoral votes.
No. There are some electoral trends that would suggest that he's doing better here in Minnesota than some of the other states that he flipped in 2016, including the fact that in 2018 in Minnesota, get this, and I was astounded when I heard this, there were 3 congressional districts in the whole country in 2018 that went from Democrat to Republican. 2 of those 3 were here in Minnesota, in CD8 and CD1.
That
and
is
so
pretty shocking.
It is shocking. And while we had a wonderful election year, of course, winning in CD2 and CD3, winning the governor's race, sweeping all the constitutional offices, Minnesota is probably a little bit more a shade of purple than it is a shade of blue. And we just have to keep working hard and not take anything for granted. Last thing I'll say on this is Donald Trump is a little bit of a trophy collector. In his life, he collects trophies. He likes to boast about things.
And he even has trophy wives.
That's right. There you go. But one of the things that for Minnesota and why he seems to be obsessed with it is because there's no bigger trophy for a Republican than flipping this state, which has the longest streak of any in the nation of voting for the Democratic presidential nominee. And so it wouldn't just help him electorally, it would also be a big feather in his cap if he could flip Minnesota. So they're trying, they're going to work hard to do it. But you know, as you know, he's got another thing coming to him, because one thing we're not going to do at the DFL is rest on our laurels. We're going to work hard, and as my mentor Paul Wellstone used to say, you run like you're 20 points behind, even if you're 20 points ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, it boggles my mind when I listen to people interviewed trying to extol the merits of Donald Trump, because there are no merits in my mind.
Right.
as I said to Senator Carlson, I was looking at my blog, and I was shocked to see that I've had so many articles on Trump. Like every time he does something bizarre or insane or something that damages the country, and oath doesn't mean anything to him, Constitution doesn't mean anything to him, but so many of the Republicans who have marched in lockstep are what really scares me. Yeah. And if we didn't learn in 2016 the lessons that Hillary learned very painfully, then we don't deserve to win. Mm-hmm. We have got to take those lessons and move forward with it. And these candidates have to support whoever the candidate is, although I must say I was shocked when the Bloomberg announcement came out yesterday.
You and me both.
I mean, he's got a right to run,
sure,
but in my mind, he is not. I would rather see him put his money, because I don't see him projecting as a winner no matter how much money he has. Give it to Amy,
yeah,
and let's have all that money that he was going to spend as a Klobuchar for president. Makes a lot more sense to me, because she could win. She's moving up in the polls. She has handled herself so much better of late than she did early on, experience being the teacher.
Right.
And I don't know if you saw the big article in the New York Times yesterday, but a really wonderful, almost full-page article on Amy Klobuchar. And,
yeah. Well, we're certainly really proud of our senior senator, and it's great to have a Minnesotan running on the national stage. And not surprising, we've had many greats running before for president from Minnesota.
Disproportionate number of people
yeah.
On the national stage that come from this state.
Yes, I think that's
absolutely.
Correct. But you know, look, I mean, again, I don't begrudge anyone who wants to get into this race. The most important thing to me is that we recognize that we need, the sooner we can coalesce behind one candidate, the sooner we can make this a choice between our nominee and Donald Trump. My concern right now is if we have a long and protracted primary, right now Donald Trump is actually out campaigning to the general electorate. He's already having conversations with those voters. He's already engaged in the general election campaign while we're engaged in this internecine battle, and it's okay. This is a tough choice, and we should have a long conversation about who our nominee should be. But during that time, we can't allow Trump to just get away with saying...
We need to get that behind us,
that's
absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And we need to get that one candidate, whoever that one candidate is going to be. And as you said, we have really such good choices of quality people that are running and who haven't told in excess of 13,000 lies.
That's right.
In the last 1,000 days. And even today, I watched him getting aboard his helicopter today and giving his take on the Trump Foundation, for which he was fined $2 million yesterday and has to take the $1.8 million and give it out to charities. It remains in there. How he spun that as to all the good that he's done over the years, when he stole from the foundation in violation of the law.
Well, what we're seeing is not only unprecedented, it's obscene. But one of the things that I want to caution folks on is we certainly need to take Trump on every time he says something racist and xenophobic and homophobic and all of his statements which are really beyond the pale. But we can't just live in that space. And what I mean by this is one of the mistakes we made in 2016
I know what you're going to say.
We believe that Donald Trump's personal character flaws were disqualifiers. And so what we did is focused on him almost exclusively. And what we didn't do is offer up to the American people a vision for what we would do as Democrats. And we didn't give them a sense about how their lives would be improved if we were in control. But make no mistake about this. The reason why
We must do that.
we have
this
to do
year.
that.
Yes,
And that's why we were
absolutely.
successful in 2018 because, you know, take Angie Craig's race, for instance, in CD2. She didn't just focus on Donald Trump. She would take him on the crazy things he was saying, as well as Jason Lewis, but she would then pivot very quickly, but here's what I stand for, and here's how I'm going to make a difference in your lives. And that's what
she
people
has.
want to hear. And she has.
She
There's no
has.
doubt.
And,
There's
not
no doubt
only
about it.
has Angie been here, but Angie has also held just about every month a town hall.
That's right.
And she's visited all over the district, which her former opponent didn't do at all, and he's chosen not to run against her wisely, I think, this year.
One of the things I would say that Trump is really smart at is he likes to have us focus over here on the shiny object. Why does he want us to focus over here? Because he's trying to get us.
That's the top of his head.
Yeah. He's trying to get us to not have him answer to the promises he made to voters in 2016. In 2016, he told people he was going to fix health care in this country and make it more affordable and more accessible.
They still don't even have a plan.
He hasn't done it. There's no plan, and it's not more accessible and more affordable. 2, he said that he was going to introduce an infrastructure bill that fixes our infrastructure throughout this country, fixing roads and bridges and bringing broadband to rural areas. Not zero. He said that he was going to build an economy that works for everyone. The reality is the economy that he has built is only working for people like himself. So the rich, the powerful, the billionaires in this country. None of that has trickled down to middle-class families or lower-income families who are still working harder than they ever have.
We had to pay
before.
more taxes this year than last year.
Of course. And lastly, he said he was going to make us safer here and abroad. And here in this country, there's been a rise of violence and a rise of hate crimes since his presidency. And around the world, he has made a mockery of our alliances, long-standing alliances that have kept Americans safe and have kept us safe around the world. He has made a mockery of those alliances.
And you can say NATO.
Absolutely.
And you can say certainly one you didn't mention was the environment.
Right.
Climate change. That's
Right.
another one.
Well, there's many issues.
And of
those
course,
are just a
his
few.
wall.
Right.
His impenetrable wall, which can be sawed through with a $100 saw.
That's right. That's right. There's a number of issues we could talk about here, but one of the things I want people to recognize is that when we talk about Donald Trump, we can't just say vote for us because he's a bad guy. We have to tell people the things he didn't do, the promises he didn't deliver on, and then we have to quickly pivot to what we stand for as Democrats and our vision about how we build a better America.
And I don't care what anybody thinks about health care in terms of, well, I care, but what they think about the various plans that are out there. All these plans will coalesce into something which is going to be more beneficial for the American people. And it's not going to cut 26-year-olds off of their family plan or up to 26-year-olds. And it's not going to take people with pre-existing conditions and force them really into welfare. There are just so many things. I was pleased to see that the education commissioner, DeVos, was fined the other day and held in contempt.
Yes.
Because, and who has she been defending? The for-profit colleges.
That's right.
That certainly are close to her and support her, as opposed to the public colleges, which are the backbone of this country.
Yeah. Well, it's not a surprise. I mean, if you look at all of the scandal in Trump's administration, the grift, the corruption, this is unprecedented. You know, and you think about the 8 years under President Obama. Not one scandal. Nothing. Nothing like this.
Nobody
no
went to
corruption.
jail.
No one went to jail.
Right.
No hearings like this. You know, the Republicans certainly tried to come after him because that's what they do. But the reality is that 8 years, and they went after him with everything they could, and they couldn't find anything. And here, how many cabinet members has he gone through already? How many chiefs of staff has he gone through?
And how many remain who have taints surrounding them,
That's
not
right.
just DeVos.
That's right.
Wilbur Ross.
That's right.
What Barr has done as Attorney General is just shocking. You talk about his chief of staff, Mulvaney, who told the truth once, and he's now going to be pilloried by the Republicans. There's no question about it.
That's why I say this election is not about party. This election is about our country. It's about who we are as Americans. Are we still a nation that values the rule of law? Are we still a nation that believes that no person is above the law and everyone should be held accountable? Because that's really what's at stake here. Are we a nation that values a representative democracy? Democracy is probably the number one thing that's on the ballot in the 2020 election.
Oh, I do believe that.
And if we lose this election, there's a real risk to our Constitution and to this democracy that we all cherish and value.
I have an article that's probably going to be in the Pioneer Press within the next couple of days, alluding to that. And it is scary. Now, you mentioned the two districts that we lost, congressional districts, one of which was now Congressman Hagedorn.
Yes.
He has a wife who I think is the head of the Republican committee in this state.
Yes.
And this is the same lady who last week, and it was the subject of another article of mine, said that we're not going to have anybody else on the ballot except Donald Trump. There are three other candidates, including a former governor, Bill Weld, who was very popular and was a pretty good governor in Massachusetts, not to let them on the ballot. Does that speak to democracy, or does that speak to, as my last line was in the article, Vladimir Putin would be proud of you?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that's exactly right, which is, at a time when trust in our institutions, the judiciary, the legislative and executive branch, government in general, politicians, the media is at an all-time low. What we need to do is we need to find a way to rise above all of that and restore people's trust in our institution and in democracy. And when you do things like that, which is basically try to rig this election for Donald Trump, it does nothing to restore people's faith that this democracy works.
And certainly young people should wake up to that, and young people who are not ones who overwhelmingly vote should vote overwhelmingly this year.
That's right.
I mean, there's a man by the name of Merrick Garland who should be sitting on the Supreme Court, and it wasn't just Trump who kept him off. It was Mitch McConnell, who was one of my favorite people to point out is just the antithesis of democracy and what he has done in terms of appointment of judges and the way they're selecting them now. Yeah. Rather than going through bar associations as they should.
Well, I think this is the untold story of Trump's administration that gets very little media attention is what they've done with the judiciary, which will have far-reaching impacts for generations. They have appointed hundreds of judges to the federal bench, all of them in their 40s, all of them young who will be there for lifetime appointments. We may be able to get rid of Donald Trump next November, and I certainly hope we will. But what we won't be able to get rid of for many generations now is his impact on the courts and the judiciary.
Of course, this is why over the years, people thought, for instance, Hugo Black was going to be so far right. Earl Warren was going to be so far right, and I can name others. Even Justice Stewart, who just retired a few years ago. Sometime these people on the bench get a conscience. Sometime they listen to their oath and they decide cases based on merit, not on party.
Well, I certainly hope that's the case.
I certainly do.
I certainly do. I mean, look, we are right now, we haven't seen a crack in the facade of Republicans in the U.S. Senate on this impeachment stuff. And, at some point, people are going to have to ask the question, when are you going to put your country ahead of your party? And I would say that's the same for the oath that any member of the judiciary takes as they take the bench. And so my hope is that they will put their oath to the Constitution ahead of partisan politics. But I have no faith in that at this point, given the people that
we have
he's
no
appointed.
reason to have faith in
Right.
it at this point.
Right.
I will say that, for instance, a typical example for me is Lindsey Graham. I think his conscience died the same day that McCain died. And what has happened to him is really, really, I wrote him an unanswered personal letter, hand wrote a letter to him about a year ago saying, you know, the mantle passed to you from McCain, and you could really take it and become a visionary for this country.
Right.
And what you have done is beyond my wildest recollection or belief, and till this day. So, you know, is he going to get a conscience back? As some of these others, some of them I know are just political hacks, but some of them are people who should, as Justin Amash did, look around and smell the roses and think of the country, think of the Constitution, think of their oath, and not think of themselves.
That's right.
And
that's
a good line. I got to put that down. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we need more statesmen. We need more leaders. We need people to, you know, this is interesting. I think, you know, if people study history, they'll remember that a number of people, as the Constitution was being put together, a number of the founders feared of what they called factionalism at the time, which was really parties. There weren't parties when our country was founded, and they worried about factionalism. And what we have now is we have, and one of the reasons they worried about factionalism is exactly what's happened today, which is that people's oath to the Constitution and to the country takes second fiddle to their oath to their party. They are more loyal to their party leadership, than they are to the people that elected them. And that is a real danger to democracy. Regardless of what party you're in, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, people should recognize the warning signs that are on the horizon for our democracy. It's not just this tyrant we have in the White House. There are so many things going on right now in our government and in politics that will potentially destroy the very government and the very form of government that we have. It is a direct abdication of the values of the Constitution of the United States, what we see happening right now.
I wrote an article before he was sworn in, and I said, beware this man, he's a Pied Piper, and he's going to get people to follow him, and just remember the tale of the Pied Piper, because it can lead to disaster and destruction.
That's right.
And God, that was prescient.
Yeah.
It really was, because we're on that road, and we have got to stand up at the ballot box, and assuming that we have an honest election, which I can't even guarantee, but we hope we're going to have an honest election. We've got to stand up and save this country.
There's no doubt we do. We absolutely do. So, and I hope people are listening and paying attention and ready to do their part to take their democracy back. And the best way to do that is at the ballot box, to get out and organize and get the vote out.
Ken Martin, DFL Chair.
Thank you as
always
always,
a
Alan.
pleasure.
Yep, absolutely.